Thank you. Thank you very much. How are you guys doing today? People, we're going to do burpees and push-ups until morale improves in here. Let's try that again. How are you guys doing today? Good. You guys fired up to be here? Good. All right. Just want to make sure you guys are awake and energized, engaged. I want to make sure I don't get the sleepy after lunch crowd. You know how that can go sometimes. But the reason I ask is because in the early days of SEAL training, you spend a hell of a lot of time in the classroom. You're basically getting a PhD in special warfare. But of course you do so on very little sleep. So the instructors would keep these large metal bathtubs full of ice water in the back of the room. Guess what those were for? Yeah, that's right. You know where I'm going with this. If you got caught nodding off, falling asleep, not paying attention, you got to sit chest deep in a bathtub full of ice water for the rest of class. Yeah, not a head dunk, not for 1 or 2 minutes, for the rest of class. And let me tell you, it's really hard to learn anything when you're shivering your ass off, reaching hypothermic levels in a bathtub full of ice water. Now, how the hell do I know that? Yes, unfortunately, I spent many, many days and hours in those ice baths, clearly not learning from my mistakes the first time around. On the night of being fully transparent with all of you, I did in fact request ice baths for this event. Fortunately for all of you, your overprotective human resources department denied my request, so you're off the hook. But I'll be watching you. No, in all honesty, thank you so much for having me. It's really a pleasure and honor to be here with all of you this afternoon. So when a SEAL platoon is on patrol in enemy territory, sneaking into an enemy compound, the man in front is the point man. He's taking point, leading his team into what we call VUCA environments. And yes, that's one of the many hundreds, if not thousands, of acronyms we have in the United States military, and it refers to the volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous environments that we operate in. Sounds like life, right? And although Navy SEALs are widely known to be the most elite and feared special operations fighting force in the entire world, we've been living in a constant state of VUCA, of pain, of loss, sacrifice, and disruption in our post-9/11 reality. Yet how have we continued to persevere, adapt, and lean into that pain and sacrifice to fight and defeat a very dangerous and decentralized enemy? In large part, it's due to our very well-defined and distinct organizational culture, a culture where every single person pushes the limits and boundaries of their comfort zone every single day. We get comfortable being uncomfortable, or as we say in the SEAL teams, we embrace the suck. And that's what we're going to talk about today. How to succeed by living a life outside of your comfort zone. Because if you really think about it, that's where the magic really happens. It's not living in the confines of your comfort zone. And when you can push the boundaries of your own personal comfort zone just a little bit every single day, the wider that area becomes. And the things that you used to fear, the things that seemed uncomfortable, or the things that seemed almost seemingly impossible become a part of your everyday life. And that winning mindset of persistence and determination reminds me of a great quote by Martin Luther King Jr. that says, "If you can't fly, you run. And if you can't run, you walk. And if you can't walk, you crawl. But no matter what, you keep moving forward." In the SEAL teams, we have an ethos, a creed that embodies our culture and our values. And a similar line from that ethos says, "I will not quit. I persevere and thrive in adversity. And if knocked down, I will get back up every time. I am never out of the fight." And that winning mindset is how each and every one of you, all of us, can continue to take point in our own lives, to push the confines of our comfort zone, to push the limits, to take calculated risks, to succeed and win, and to be all in all the time. right, what do you think? Does that remind you of your workplace environment? Maybe on Mondays, right? Now, being all in all the time is one of the many philosophies we hold dear in the SEAL teams. That phrase was originally coined by one of our fallen SEAL Team 6 team leaders. And his name was Tommy Valentine, and when he would indoctrinate new guys into the team, he would sit them down and ask them about what they thought their level of participation on the team should be. And of course, there was only one answer, and that is to be all in all the time. That is part of our culture and mindset and how we approach our work, our lives. Simply put, it's about persistence, determination, giving every single thing we do, everything we've got, and nothing less. We too, all of us, can embody that winning mindset. And each and every one of you can take away from this how to embody that winning mindset, to get comfortable being uncomfortable, to win, and to be all in all the time. Well, it was December of 1999 when I first made my decision to be all in. As it sometimes happens in a fit of youthful foolishness and indiscretion, I quit my corporate finance job and joined the United States Navy with a dream of becoming a SEAL. A decision, of course, that would forever change my life and set me on the path that I'm on today. So this afternoon, I would like to share a little bit of that journey with you, share some stories from training, from the battlefield, so to speak. But more importantly, I want to share some experiences from both literal and figurative battlefields about overcoming adversity, about being able to adapt your mindset and approach to life, to work, and hopefully give you guys some little bit of entertainment and maybe even some insights, key takeaways, and God willing, maybe even a little bit of inspiration you can apply to your own lives, both personally and professionally. So let's dive in, shall we? People, do you guys want to do burpees or what? Let's try that one more time. Let's dive in, shall we? Yes. All right, now as a bit of background, I grew up in the great nation of Texas. Do we have any Texans in the room? Not one damn Texan in the whole room. You guys have got to be kidding. I wore my boots for you guys. I'm wearing boots at Google. Little fun fact for you guys. At any given time, about 1/3 of all SEALs are from the great state of Texas. Now, I know you're a very data-driven organization. Please don't go fact-checking that data. But I'm sure it's accurate. I just really, really want to believe it. So I grew up in Dallas. I was a swimmer in high school, played rugby in college. I attended Southern Methodist University, Oxford University, ultimately earning degrees in finance and economics. So naturally, upon graduation, I took a job as an entry-level financial analyst with a big investment firm. And during that time, I had a close friend of mine in college who was now a senior at SMU, and I was working out in corporate America. Now, he was, in fact, one of these guys who had a vision, a lofty and, let's face it, highly unrealistic vision of becoming a SEAL. It was his passion, his purpose in life, his reason for being. I thought it was a little bit ridiculous at the time, but we started training together. I wanted to find a way to stay fit while I was working in finance, prepare a friend for an arduous journey. So we started spending a lot of time together and, of course, having a lot of dialogue about the history of the SEAL teams, the Naval Special Warfare community. I read one book, then I read another book and another book, and I became, over time, enthralled and fascinated by their high-performance culture and mindset and approach to their work and life, their core values. And over time, with all the training and the studying of the Naval Special Warfare community, obviously my close friends and family and colleagues started realizing this growing passion for my own possible, rather dynamic career path shift. So one day I was having a conversation with my twin brother. I'll preface this by saying we're fraternal twins. We are polar opposites in just about every possible way, but I did want to run this idea by him before I ran it up the chain of command to Mom and Dad, who would no doubt be a little shocked by this dramatic shift. And you know what he was doing? Supportive brother that he is. That's right, he was laughing his ass off. He's like, Brent, you've got to be kidding me. SEALs? Like, you're not being serious, right? I'll admit, I don't even really know much about it, but I know one thing. There is no way in hell you could ever do that. I mean, let's face it, aren't these guys supposed to be, I don't know, world-class warriors or something? Like really tough guys? You are not tough at all. I mean, let's break it down here. Well, you have allergies, really bad allergies, and asthma. You're literally wheezing right now, and there's tissue on the floor. Is that yours? You wear those thick contact lenses? You can't see shit. How's that going to work? And remember last week? You forgot I thought about this, but remember last week when you cried a little bit during that TV commercial? Again, don't know much about it, but I am pretty certain SEALs aren't nerdy, sniffly, emotional guys who cry during a Clorox bleach commercial. So let's just forget we had this conversation and stick with your nerdy finance job. Well, now I knew I had to do it, right? This is a true story. Literally a week later, I quit my job, and my buddy, whom I'd been training with, moved up here to Crested Butte, Colorado, where we trained for an additional 6 months for 5 hours a day at 10,000 feet altitude to get into the best physical condition that we could. Then in early 2000, joined the Navy, and after a couple months of basic training, was on a plane headed out to sunny San Diego, California, where we would begin our journey. And I can tell you with exact certainty and clarity, like it was yesterday, that I have never been more nervous in my entire life than the day I stepped foot into the lobby of the Naval Special Warfare Training Center. Because it is a very scary and depressing thing, my friends. Knowing for a fact, Matt, that your life is going to be pure hell and misery for many months to come. But of course, at this point, there was no turning back. I had to be all in. And let's put our talent acquisition and employee retention hats on for a minute. I'll tell you another interesting fact. It takes 18 months and costs about $3 million to acquire one SEAL. And that doesn't count the millions of dollars and years of arduous training once you actually make it to a team. That 18 months is broken into various segments. The first segment is 6 months long and called BUDS. Another one of our acronyms, it stands for Basic Underwater Demolition SEAL. If any of you have seen the SEAL movie Lone Survivor, it's unfortunately based on a true story. The opening scenes are actually from a Discovery Channel documentary about BUDS Class 234. We run 6 classes a year, so every 2 months I follow them in Class 235. I was present for all this filming, and this will give you guys just a teeny tiny taste of what BUDS is all about. Fun? Does anybody feel like they missed their calling in life? Anybody age 30 or younger, come see me afterwards, please. Didn't think I was going to use this as a recruiting platform, did you? But now that I think about it, that video probably really damages my recruiting possibility here at Google. Now, the funny thing is what you just saw was a depiction of only the first 3 weeks of BUDS. BUDS has a 90% failure rate of highly capable candidates. None of us are extraordinary, exceptional individuals. We're just common people with an uncommon desire to succeed. So imagine those types of activities going on for months and months at a time. And then the irony, Wendy, is that the training just gets more difficult after that. That's the funny part. It's actually not that funny. If you think about that mindset, that winning mindset, to highlight that, I want to focus on some of the things you heard the instructors saying to the students in those video clips, where he said, gentlemen, winning here is a conscious decision. You will make up your mind whether you want to pass or you're going to choose to fail. Keep moving no matter what. Find an excuse to win. You can push yourself further than your mind or body ever thought possible. BUDS training is based on the rule of 7. When your brain is telling you that you can go no further and take no more pain, you can go 7 times longer, 7 times more, and push yourself 7 times harder. And again, that's why very few people make it through this selection process. When we think about that winning mindset and we approach our life and our goals, setting those lofty goals, that lofty vision, we've all done that in various aspects of our life. We set that lofty goal, and then we have to work backwards to find our own path to success. Elite athletes do this, elite warriors do it. Each and every one of you has done it, whether you realize it or not, at various stages of your life, to achieve goals academically, in your personal life, in athletics, to land a job here at Google, which what I hear is not an easy thing to do. That's a lofty vision, a lofty goal. It took a lot of hard work to get here. Same thing when I made that decision to transition from corporate finance to start training and join the Navy to become a SEAL, a total mindset transformation. I had to think about the reality of the world around me in a totally different way. Everything had to change in order for me to achieve that lofty goal of a program that has a 90% failure rate. Let's take public speaking, for example, Steve. People always ask me, well, how'd you get into this part of your profession, the public speaking, and do you enjoy it? I mean, who likes public speaking? Nobody. It's like the #1 fear of most people. And it's kind of a funny story. It started in graduate school. I actually started my MBA program 1 week after I got out of the SEAL teams. And literally a month into this program, I was doing my very first group class presentation, and I got up for my portion. I had some notes. My hands were shaking. And I was sweating. I'm like, I'm a Navy SEAL combat veteran. I'm just standing in front of a classroom of 50 people, and my hands were shaking, and I'm sweating. I'm terrified. But I kind of enjoyed it at the same time, and several years later, it was December of 2012. It was a Saturday morning, and I opened my laptop, I was checking my email, and right there at the top of the inbox was an email, personally, from the president of Bank of America, Merrill Lynch, Asia Pacific, one of the top 4 executives in the entire global organization. And he explained to me that he had read the first article I'd written for my Forbes column, literally a month before this, which was titled From the Battlefield to the Boardroom, a Navy SEAL's Guide to Business Leadership Success. This guy's a highly energetic banking prodigy, an Australian guy, super into fitness, super obsessed with special operations culture. He's like, I really love how you draw these correlations and these cultural values and principles. Now you can apply those to building winning cultures and winning teams in the business world. And he went on to invite me to do a series of keynote presentations and workshops at their Global Leadership Conference in Hong Kong the following month. He didn't ask if I was a speaker, didn't ask to see a website, didn't ask to see any videos, didn't ask for client testimonials, nothing. As silly as this sounds, just the fact that I was a SEAL was enough for him. But of course, being the entrepreneur that I am, I was like, hell yeah, of course I'll come out there and speak to all you people in Hong Kong. Sent the email back and I closed my laptop and I turned to my wife. I was like, oh shit, what the hell did I just commit to? I don't know how to be a speaker, but I had enough content. I built some presentations based on various discovery calls we had, and I prepared relentlessly. Living outside your comfort zone and pushing those boundaries cannot succeed without discipline and accountability. So I prepared and rehearsed and rehearsed and rehearsed, practice, practice, practice. And I went out there, went on stage for the first keynote, knowing that I had several other talks and I was doing breakout sessions throughout the day. It was exhausting. Go up on stage. Of course, once again, I'm terrified. But again, I had rehearsed and prepared so relentlessly that it went very well. They had me back to Singapore and Sydney the following month. I've done that Asia Pacific tour every year since then, and I've doubled the frequency of speaking engagements every year over the past 6 years. I speak about 75 times a year. Those early years, it was always uncomfortable. I always had to get comfortable being uncomfortable. It was always terrifying getting on stage. I was always nervous. My wife would always say, because she used to travel with me before all of our children, and she'd say, honey, I like you so much better after you're done talking. She'd be trying to talk to me and I'd just be in the zone. I wouldn't even answer, couldn't even hear her talking. But I found a passion for it. Even though it was uncomfortable, I pushed myself beyond that comfort zone to do something that I had a passion for, that I had a desire to continue to do. And any time in our life when we have that vision and that lofty goal, just like we say in the SEAL teams and other areas of life, we have to break that lofty goal, that lofty vision, break it down. In the SEAL teams, we say, you got to eat the elephant one bite at a time. You break the big goals into bite-sized chunks, making them less daunting and more achievable. Navy SEALs can only be forged in adversity. Every single person in this room has and will continue to face various aspects of adversity throughout your entire life. But again, as you know, it's what we do and how we react in the face of adversity that builds our character and defines who we are. So the third week of BUDS, the third week of this 18-month training pipeline is called Hell Week. And I assure you it's a lot worse than that sounds. Actually, that sounds pretty bad, doesn't it? Hell Week? It's designed to do one thing, simply weed out those not committed to the vision of becoming a SEAL. You do not sleep for an entire week. You run the equivalent of multiple marathons while wet and sandy inside and out. This is called getting a sugar cookie. It sucks because the instructors make a concerted effort to ensure you get the sand on the inside of your clothing so that it strips the flesh off your body as you run. It's like wearing sandpaper inside out. It does, it's very effective. You swim dozens of miles in the open frigid ocean. You run with heavy logs, heavy boats, heavy backpacks. You run the obstacle course multiple times a day. Endless calisthenics, brutal beatings, all while battling severe bruising, cuts, lacerations, stress fractures, cellulitis, broken bones. The most severe chafing, people, you could ever imagine in all of the areas you would never, ever want to be severely chafed. In fact, calling it chafing is not even accurate. You literally have, I'm sorry, but I'm going to say it anyways, you have no skin left between your legs, around your waist, and your armpits, and on the top of your head. And then imagine all the extra time you spend in the salt water really kicks it up a notch. Oh, and one more thing, and pretty much constant second stage hypothermia. So bearing all that in mind, let's do the math really quick. This is a picture of my graduating class, intentionally grainy to preserve people's identities. But about 1,000 guys applied for our BUDS class. We run 6 classes a year. Of that 1,000, only 250 were selected to begin training. Of that 250, only 23 graduated, earning the right to wear the SEAL Trident pin. Now, the interesting thing about this pin is that it's the only emblem in the United States military where the eagle's head is fully bowed. bowed in memory of those that forged the path ahead of us. Bye. Everybody say goodbye. Thank you. Another line from the SEAL ethos says, "My trident is a symbol of honor and heritage, bestowed upon me by the heroes that have gone before. It embodies the trust of those that I am bound to defend. It is a privilege we must earn every day." Your roles, for example, as members of this team, of this amazing organization, is a privilege each of you have to earn every single day, simply by asking yourself, what will I do today to be the best, most valuable, and effective member of this organization that I can be? Or as we say in the SEAL teams, how will I earn my trident today? So after several combat tours, I left the SEAL teams, went to graduate school, and decided to become an entrepreneur. Another very uncomfortable thing. I didn't have any money saved after being in the Navy. It's like working for free, people. I had student loans, we started a company, and basically the first company I started right out of graduate school was essentially an early version of Trulia. Zillow. It was a home finding search engine. The housing market was booming, the economy was booming. We knew this ride was never gonna end. This housing bubble was never gonna burst. We raised $2 million for this business, we kept growing it. We probably spent $200,000 a month in Google AdWords because our SEO rankings sucked. I had to learn how to become an SEO expert, which we all know is impossible because you change the algorithm every 30 seconds. Thanks a lot, guys. Oh, I just blacked out. I went off on a tangent. All our rankings dropped. We had to spend 200 grand a month in AdWords. So you're welcome. You're welcome. And then 2008 came around. Anybody remember what happened in 2008? The global economy collapsed. The housing market was destroyed. All of our advertisers cut their, what's the first budget to go when there's an economic downturn? Marketing, of course. We got hammered. There was a lot of pain, a lot of struggle, a lot of adversity, a lot of crying, mostly by me, unfortunately, in front of people. And it wasn't really until I had to reflect back on and lean into some of those principles and that mindset that got me through SEAL training, that got me through hundreds and hundreds of combat missions and the loss of many friends, and really reflecting on the culture and values that forged SEAL culture and how we could apply those principles in building a winning organization that was resilient and would bounce back from this adversity. We also lead into the principle that we hold dear in the SEAL teams of adaptability. So we diversified ourselves. We had learned so much about digital marketing and media that we decided to start a digital marketing agency. So we borrowed $100,000 from the first business to start the second business, gave those shareholders equal common stock shares in the new company, and that company doubled in size using those principles I just talked about, doubled in size every year until we sold it a year and a half ago. But even that company went through a lot of change, a lot of organizational transformation. You're talking about a fast-growing company in an even more rapidly changing industry, mostly chasing your Google algorithm. Again, thank you. But again, all those principles can be applied to building winning teams, winning organizations, and of course, succeeding in life in general. And that's kind of what I wanted to talk about in more detail today. We had a failing company at that time, starting a new business, all those things causing a lot of pain and adversity. I was CEOs of 2 companies, not an easy thing to do. And then more adversity came along. It usually comes in 3s for some reason. Anybody know that about life? And something shitty happens, 2 more things are coming, so get ready. I'll spare you the details, but during that time, I was trying to save a failing business and start a new business and make that business successful. I was literally transformed into a full-time single parent to a 2-year-old overnight. Anybody in here have kids? It sucked, man. I'm like, where does mommy keep your stuff? I would drop them off at school with no shoes. It was a disaster. But the point of telling you this is sometimes in life when we face adversity, we also have to make very difficult and humbling decisions to do what's best for our family, to do what's best for the organizations we're a part of. So what I ended up having to do is making the decision to step down as CEO of that second company. I knew I could not effectively lead that organization even though I tried. I had to shift my priorities to my son. But again, that was a very uncomfortable thing. It was something that was outside my comfort zone. But then the magic happened. I was able to place myself in a role I was very passionate about in the organization as Chief Marketing Officer. And that company continued to thrive and things got better. And then something else happened. A few years later, I had an opportunity to go to one of 2 weddings. One was a wedding in Houston for one of my best friends from college and high school. Another was a wedding in Costa Rica from one of my best SEAL team buddies. Wedding in Houston, wedding in Costa Rica. Where do you guys think I went? Costa Rica. The day I got to Costa Rica was the day I met my wife. I literally told her 2 days into that wedding weekend that we were going to get married. Taking a little calculated risk, right? I knew that would do one of two things: scare the crap out of her and send her running for the hills, or maybe marginally intrigue her enough to continue the conversation. A month later, this is a true story too, a month later, we got matching tattoos before the ring. We got matching tattoos. 2 months after that, we got engaged, and a week after that, we got married. Now we have 2 more beautiful children and are happy as can be. But again, it's about taking that calculated risk in life, whether it's in our work, in our personal lives, in our relationships. But living outside your comfort zone and finding any level of success really cannot happen, ever, without extremely high levels of discipline and accountability and follow-through. The concept of accountability in SEAL training starts on day 1, and as we say, our training is never complete. So from the very first week of training throughout the entire 18-month training process, we perform a weekly, what I refer to as an accountability drill. We're essentially teaching ourselves and our teammates to hold each other to the highest level of standard, the highest level of accountability. It's a wonderful, fascinating weekly evolution called the top 5, bottom 5. So every Friday afternoon before the class is secured for the weekend, they bring the class into the classroom, they sit you down, and the instructors pass out blank sheets of paper, and on that paper are 5 lines on the top and 5 lines on the bottom, and you are instructed to anonymously rank who you believe the top 5 performers are in the class and who you believe the bottom 5 performers are in the class. I know you're thinking from a human resources perspective, wow, that's probably pretty cool. No, they never tell you who the top 5 are, because people, that would be positive reinforcement. And we do not deal in positive reinforcement in SEAL training. We deal only in negative reinforcement. So what they do is they tally up all the names in the bottom 5 and post them right there on the whiteboard next to the door. Not a great way to start your weekend. The one name most frequently listed in the bottom 5 every Friday until the end of training is immediately ejected from training based on peer evaluations. No ifs, ands, or buts, no appealing to the empathies of the human resources department, because we do not have a human resources department in SEAL training. We take this concept of accountability extremely seriously. We take it with us to the battlefield. When you're on patrol in enemy territory, each and every man is accountable, for example, for owning a field of fire, the area you are responsible for protecting should the enemy attack. And that's a great thing about accountability, especially in a team setting, is because when everyone is accountable, everybody is executing their duties to the best of their ability, you don't have to worry about anything outside of your own field of fire. Accountability is equally as important in a team setting as it is in a personal setting. We're trying to achieve goals, as you can imagine. When I decided to make that lofty leap and take that risk to quit my rather lucrative finance job to join the Navy and try out for the SEAL program, knowing that there was a high likelihood that I would never make it. Again, it was a total mindset transformation with that lofty vision, but again, like I've said, you cannot achieve those lofty goals pushing outside your comfort zone without extremely high levels of accountability and discipline. Every night I would come home from the office about 6:30 p.m., throw on a backpack, running shoes. The backpack had fins and goggles in it. I would run 4 miles to the SMU pool, swim a mile, then run 4 miles home. On the weekends, we'd run marathons, do various strength training activities. I did this for an entire year while I was working in finance. And then, as you know, we moved up to Crested Butte, Colorado, and trained again for 5 hours a day at 10,000 feet altitude. But doing all that required an extremely high level of focus and discipline and accountability, because I had to transform my entire life to mold it around achieving this vision. My social life had to change, my dietary habits had to change, my fitness regime had to change. I did it, of course, responsibly. I wasn't shutting out loved ones from my life, but I did shut out a lot of people that didn't need to be in my life, that would stand in the way of me achieving that goal. My social life changed dramatically. But again, all these things, accountability, discipline, are critical for living a life beyond your comfort zone and achieving those lofty goals we have set in our lives. Let these pictures sink in for 1 second. You know, studies actually show that interacting with animals can actually improve human social interaction in the areas of trust and empathy. So I thought these pictures were appropriate for the trust slide. Yes, that is a monkey on my head. My last tour was in Africa. His name is Iron Mike. I raised him from infancy. I found him on the side of the road. His mom was injured. And at night, he would sleep in my cot with me, either nestled in my armpit or on my chest. And in the morning, he would wake up and crawl up onto my chin, grab my eyelashes, and rip my eyes open. Be like, "Hey, Dad, it's time to eat." you people in the room who have kids know that our children basically do something similar every frickin' morning. My 2-year-old came in the morning, 5 o'clock 2 days ago, with a hat and sunglasses and a diaper on. Also demanding to eat. And yes, that is a dog attached to my body as I jump out of the back of that plane. You know what he's thinking right now? Man's best friend, my ass. Not a happy I don't know what it is about plummeting 130 miles an hour towards the face of the earth. Takes a little getting used to. They don't particularly care for it. I know there's a lot of dog lovers in here. I'm a dog lover. I have 3 myself. Trust me, these dogs get taken care of a lot better than we do. They stay in their own hotel rooms at the W when we go on training trips. So don't worry about these dogs. They're fully taken care of. I wanted to tell you guys a brief story about trust from my Buds Classes Hell Week experience. Hell Week, again, the brutal crucible that all SEALs share, that few pass. Hell Week starts on a Sunday and ends on a Friday afternoon. And the beauty of that Sunday is that the whole class will report to the classroom with only a couple required items in their possession. And the amazing thing about this Sunday is that the students have no idea when Hell Week will commence. The anxiety, the anguish is literally eating away at your soul. You know, it's probably going to be one of the worst week of your life, and you just want it to start. That's the weird paradox of it all. And as a way to inspire us and motivate us, our class leader, who is the highest ranking officer in your class, he read to us the St. Crispin's Day speech from William Shakespeare's Henry V. And he read aloud those famed lines that say, "We few, we happy few, we band of brothers, for he today that sheds his blood with me shall be my brother." John died 4 days later. We were 4.5 days into Hell Week. There were only about 30 students left of the 250. We were in full gear, no fins, in an Olympic-sized swimming pool doing relay races. And we were performing an evolution called the Caterpillar Race, which is not as cute as it sounds. Your boat crew of 7 guys is in the water, in a line, swimming backwards like this. Except I would have my legs wrapped around the waist of the guy in front of me. His legs are wrapped around the waist of the guy in front of him, and so on and so forth. Now, even fresh, this is a very difficult evolution to execute properly, much less to beat the other boat crew to the other side of the pool. Everything in Hell Week is a race. 4.5 days into Hell Week, you're hallucinating so violently, your body is so brutally beaten, it's more of an evolution in controlled drowning. Long story short, John suffered a massive heart failure and drowned in the pool right next to us. But again, we were hallucinating so violently and so exhausted at that point, nobody had any idea what was going on. So they ran us back across the street to the Special Warfare Center, and they put us in the classroom where we waited for a couple hours. And after a couple hours, the door opens and the instructor staff walk in, and with them was the commanding officer of Buds at the time. He walked to the front of the room, turned around to address the class. He said, "Gentlemen, listen up. Lieutenant John Scott was pronounced dead at 1 a.m. Lieutenant Parado, you're taking over." And he said it with that level of candor, I believe, purposefully. He paused for a minute to let that sink in. Then he said, "Gentlemen, get used to this feeling that you have right now. This is what it's going to be like in the teams, and you will lose teammates. You have to learn to control your emotions, stay focused on the mission, and trust each other no matter what, especially amidst adversity." And it was a bit of odd foreshadowing because he really had no idea how right he really was. Literally 4 months later was 9/11, and that's when we all knew we'd be going to war, where trust would be at a premium. When we think about the notion of trust, like accountability in a team setting, obviously critically important, the trust all of you have for one another as team members of this organization, the trust you build with the customer, the trust you build with your friends, your family, and your relationships. As we all know, trust is the bedrock of any sound relationship. It takes a long time to build and moments to break, but it's equally as important in an individual setting, especially when we're talking about living a life outside your comfort zone and setting and achieving those lofty goals. The trust you have in yourself to fulfill the promises you make to yourself to achieve those goals, to be disciplined and accountable. And like accountability, trust is the bedrock of any successful purpose-driven life. It's how you fuel the drive to achieve those goals. It's how you shut out the noise and the naysayers who want to stand in the way of you achieving your goals and your dreams. It builds resilience, and resilience is the foundation of any life lived outside your comfort zone. In closing, I want to share a short poem with you guys. There's a poem that's widely shared in the Naval Special Warfare community. It was authored by Chief Tecumseh He was a Shawnee chief from the War of 1812. It's shared widely in our community. It's part of our culture. It speaks to how we approach our life.
The bottom-ranked individuals every week or whatever period of time it was, what characteristic put them in the bottom?
It's a good question because typically from those peer reviews, BUD/S is a very level playing field. We have Olympic athletes who quit in the first minute of Hell Week. We have guys who look like, you know, some accountant who crush you in a 15-mile ruck run. But typically, the data points that come out of those anonymous peer-to-peer surveys are more character-driven. Your moral compass is off. You got an ego problem. You're not a team player. You're not a collaborator. Basically, somebody who's not a trustworthy person who you would not want to be standing next to in a gunfight. That's what gets those people dropped out of BUD/S more frequently than performance dropped, more frequently than quitting. When it comes down to performance evaluation, if you're not the best shooter on the shooting range, or you're having trouble with the ocean swims, they'll typically work with you if you have a sound moral compass and they believe that you'll be a great culture fit for our organization. But Windows, and the instructors now, they use iPads now, and they had clipboards back in my day. But they have this scale and this algorithm they created where there's, you know, on one bar of the scale, there's your physical and tactical abilities that are needed as a SEAL, and the rest is culture and moral values. And that's what gets people dropped, is if they don't think you're going to be a good fit for our organization or you're not a trustworthy individual. So it's a good question. Yes, ma'am.
You mentioned that there's BUD/S as one of several different.
Yes. So you'll go through BUD/S for 6 months, and then the 25 or 30 students that will graduate from BUD/S will then go on to SQT, or SEAL qualification training, which is another year of advanced training. So you're doing of less getting your ass kicked, and you're doing more of the really learning the technical skills and tactical skills that you need to be as a SEAL. So now they bake in a lot more schools. They do language schools, free fall school, breacher school, some other things that you never used to get. You'd get those teams or those schools later on once you get to a team. But now the guys are coming in more fit than we've ever seen them and more qualled up. So they basically hit the ground running, because there's only 2,000 active SEALs in the world at any given time, yet we have conflicts all over the world. It's not just Iraq, Syria, Afghanistan, it's everywhere. Places I can't mention, of course, but we have more conflicts and more missions than we have people. And again, we're open for business for you ladies too. Remember 3 years ago, we lifted the restriction on women in the front lines of combat. I will say we haven't had one single female applicant yet, but it will happen someday. They're out there. So, thank you. Yes, sir.
What are some of the ways you're making yourself uncomfortable in civilian life?
A lot of way to do it, and this is kind of also how I prepared, because people always say, well, you know, is BUD/S and SEAL training more mental? Is it more physical? I believe if you're preparing for something like this, my approach was it's very difficult to prepare mentally because you really don't know what it's going to be like. Everybody's journey through SEAL training is totally different. But I prepared physically as relentlessly as possible, because when you push your body as hard as you can, it increases mental fortitude and mental strength and emotional intelligence. And so that's kind of how I do that. So I still do that in life when I approach, you know, fitness. I travel a lot, so my diet's not as good as it possibly could be, so I have to work out harder. And I have 3 kids, so chasing those crazies around is also a good way to do it. But again, doing things like public speaking, that was something that took years to really get comfortable doing, to where I was always nervous, I was always fearful, but now I'm not. Now I can focus more on preparation as opposed to combating the fear and anxiety of getting up in front of an audience, whether it's 30 people or 3,000 people. And other things are just taking calculated risk in business, in life, and those personal goals. The transition to sell the company 1.5 years ago was a bit of a risky transition to go all in on writing the book and doing more speaking and building a consulting practice around this. So now I don't have 200 amazing employees anymore. I have me and a few other people. So it's kind of going back to the drawing board, being an entrepreneur again, where it's all on my shoulders to figure it out. So it's always taking not just irresponsible risk, but calculated risk, and then working your ass off to make sure that vision is fulfilled. So, thank you. Who else?
Question.
Yes, Steve.
To those 90% that do get cut or quit.
I always joke that the SEAL program is the best recruiting tool the regular Navy ever had. You're not going home, people. You're stuck in the Navy for 4 or 5 years doing any job they want to give you. Before, in my day, you had to choose what's a rate, which is a job, so a sonar technician or whatever. And because 90% of those people need a job and a career path and somewhere to place them after they inevitably fail out of buds, now SEAL is a rate. So the problem with that is it's good because you're taking advancement exams based on the jobs you actually do. I was a sonar tech. That's like, listening to little pings in a submarine. So I took an advancement test one time in Iraq. This is going to be a ding to my character, but I was like, I don't know anything about this. There's no study materials. I was like, somebody go find me. We were in a base in Iraq. I was like, somebody find me a sonar tech. Luckily, there was some sonar tech there, and I was like, can we collaborate a little bit on this? I didn't cheat. He was my study partner. But the problem with SEAL being a rate now is that it's great for advancement exams, but now you don't have a job coming out of bud, so the Navy can do whatever they want with you, which is also, I would hope, a motivator for those individuals not to quit, because you don't know where they're gonna stick you. Did that answer the question?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Anything else? Yes, sir.
Staying all in all the time is a wonderful motto, but it takes its toll. Can you speak to resiliency in that?
Yes, the concept of all in all the time is all about prioritization and execution. I get that question a lot, and when I have time to explain it, it's usually in Q&A, but it's not about, you can't go all in on everything. And I don't even like the concept of multitasking, because then you're just doing a whole bunch of things really crappily. So it's really all about prioritization. So if you can prioritize those goals you have in life or in work or whatever it is, and invest the appropriate amount of time and resources or whatever is needed into that prioritization, then you can really go all in. But you can't say, well, I want to be an expert guitar player, and I want to have great upward mobility at Google, and I also want to have all this and all this and this. You're not going to be able to do all that all in all the time all at once. It has to be a prioritized list of the things that are most important to you, that you're most passionate about, and if you have a passion for those things, then you're going to be successful, because you're going to willingly put the work and the time into being successful. And then once you achieve some level of success in that field, then maybe shift to another one of those priorities. So good question. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Can you talk a little bit about the role of mentors and kind of leaders in your life, in your experience?
Yes.
In the Navy and otherwise, after you have started your civilian life?
Yes, absolutely. It's a great question about mentorship. For example, I had a lot of mentors, throughout my life in high school and college. But when I told my parents, "Hey, I'm going to try out for the SEAL program," they're like, "Oh, good luck with that." But ironically, and I didn't even know this at the time, my dad's best friend in college, who they swam together, they also went to SMU, was a Vietnam-era SEAL. So, and he still lived in San Diego. So he called his friend Tom up and said, "Hey, Brent's joining the Navy. Can you kind of talk him out of it?" No, I'm kidding. He's joining the Navy. Can you, when he gets out there, it'd be great if you could kind of take him under your wing, mentor him a little bit, tell him about the community, the process. Obviously, it changed vastly since the Vietnam-era guys. He was in Bud's class 32. I was in Bud's class 235. So years later, of course, but he became a phenomenal mentor for me, so much so that he actually became the first investor in my first business. So it was a great opportunity to learn from him, not just about the SEAL community, but about business and entrepreneurship. And the downside was that he also liked to swim the La Jolla Cove every morning at 5 a.m. And he's my mentor and investor in my first company, so guess who also got to swim the Cove at 5 a.m. every day? Anyways. And then, of course, in the SEAL teams, you informally have other mentors, and you're basically the older guys who've been there longer and seen more stuff. And it was such a great part of my experience that I now mentor young guys into the program. I've mentored 7 or 8 guys, and I will say I'm 7 for 7. So, which of course I take all of the full credit for. But it's neat because it's a way of giving back. I had mentors throughout my entire life that really were phenomenal building blocks for the goals that I achieved. And so it's also a way that I give back now because I get, through social media and things like that, I have high school kids all the time saying, "Hey, I want to go to Buds." I'm like, "Oh my God, here we go again." I'm like, "You're a freshman. I can't do anything for you right now." However, it's a really fascinating thing to see the drive in these young kids and the respect that I have for them now. This is the post 9/11 world. In the special operations community, you will be going to war. I joined selfishly as more of a physical challenge. Pre-9/11, I was like, well, I can do that. So it was a selfish thing. I thought I'd be traveling the world and getting tattoos and drinking in the Philippines. And I did all the drinking, got all the tattoos, but never went to anywhere nice. I spent all my time in Iraq and Afghanistan and other places. But I have such a respect for these young kids now going in knowing that if they make it, they will go to war and they want to serve at that highest capacity. I've only mentored officers except for this one guy he reached out first when he was, I think it was a freshman or sophomore in high school, just a good Christian boy from Texas. See, Texas, told you guys. And, I was very polite and I was responsive, and my wife was like, honey, you don't have time to respond to every high school kid that reaches out wanting to be a SEAL. There's a lot of them out there. And I kept in touch, but I was transparent with them. I was like, there's not a whole lot I can really do for you. You're in East Texas, I'm in San Diego, and you're a sophomore in high school. You've got a few years to go, buddy, especially if you're going to go in right after high school and not college. And he was so persistent, so determined. He just kept training and training. He kept in touch off and on throughout the months and years. And then all of a sudden, I got home from the office one day, and my phone, I got a text, and he said, hey, it's Garrett. I just checked into Bud's. I was like, holy crap. I was like, honey, he's here. And I was like, come on over to the house. He is by far the most disciplined individual I have ever mentored. Far more disciplined than the officers, which is kind of scary because they're in the leadership roles. But all he wants to do is go to SEAL Team 6, which is Naval Special Warfare Development Group. So if you want to aspire to go to SEAL Team 6, you have to be in the regular SEAL teams for at least 4 years, have an immaculate record, have all the qualifications that you can only get if you're top rank in your platoon. He's the lowest ranking. He just turned 21. And he's a sniper and a breacher and a JTAC already. A JTAC is the important radio guy that talks to the F-22 pilots telling them where to drop ordnance. Kind of a big responsibility for a 22-year-old or 21-year-old. But he's so emotionally mature and so disciplined in his approach. He doesn't party. He just studies and works out. That's all he does. He's the lowest ranking guy in his troop, yet he's the highest ranked as far as performance in his troop. Very well respected. And so, I mean, he's a shoo-in for going through the SEAL Team 6 selection process. But it's just a really, again, I take all the credit for his success. But it's just fascinating to see these kids go through. So, because mentorship is rewarding, as rewarding for the mentor as it is for the mentee. At least I've found that. So, good question. Thank you. Yes. Do we have time? I don't know what time is it. Yeah. Okay, we're good. Yeah.
Would you allow or encourage your own sons to be a SEAL?
I would, like my parents, my answer to this is typically I would be cautiously optimistic. Obviously, when I told my parents about this, my mom was somewhat devastated. But then when 9/11 occurred, she was very devastated. And then when we found that my task unit from SEAL Team 5 back in 2003, we were the very first SEALs deployed into Iraq. So she was also not super thrilled about that, because you can go to what's called CENTCOM, which is the Central Command, or Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, or you go to PACOM, where nothing's really going on. Guam, Philippines, Japan, where you're just doing training and exercises and readiness drills. But everybody wants to go where the fight is. And she wanted me to go where the fight was not. So I would be cautiously optimistic. I would be supportive. I would never encourage it. My dad was a Marine during Vietnam. Never once did he ever encourage me to go into the military. If anything, he was happy I had a job after college, So he was like, sweet, stick with that. Then I was like, I'm going to the Navy. He's like, what? You have a job. I just paid for 4 years of college. What are you doing? But again, if there was passion there and drive, I would be very supportive. I found this statistic out recently because I do a lot of tours of the training facility to help raise money for the SEAL Family Foundation that I'm on the board of. And they were giving this tour, and that question kind of came up. And they're like, well, how often do the sons of SEALs make it through training? It's actually a funny statistic. The answer was, guys, we're not a family business. Statistically, the sons of SEALs are less likely to make it. I don't know why that is. I don't know if they go in with a different approach or some sort of an entitled mindset thing. Well, clearly, I got the blood of a SEAL warrior running through my veins. Obviously, this is going to be a piece of cake, and most of them quit. Or, sometimes they get injured and things like that. But I would be, it's just the same risk that, my parents are worried about of, having some, a good job out of college and taking the risk to go into the Navy for 5 years and knowing that 90% will fail. That their point was, well, aren't you kind of putting your life on hold for 5 years when you fail out of BUD/S? And so of course that gave me the drive not to fail out of BUD/S. But I would encourage it, but I would be supportive. So.
I have a question.
Yeah.
What did you tell your brother when you made it?
He was at graduation. I was like, what's up, bro? How are you doing by the way? How's your career going? Yeah. No, he was. any of people in your life that are naysayers being like, oh, that's probably not a good decision. I mean, again, once you make it through Hell Week, it's very unlikely that you're not going to make it all the way. We weed 90% of the people out in the first 5 weeks. So, so within 5 weeks of being at Buds, whoever was saying you couldn't do it is going to know that you can, or that you failed, like they said you would. So, yeah.
So of the people who stuck around and waited till the end, how did they keep themselves motivated in the moment?
It's a good question about keeping yourself motivated in the moment. Another interesting piece of that is you could never predict the people who will be standing at graduation. Out of the 250 people, it's not necessarily the big tattoo-covered, muscle-bound macho guy or someone who is an Olympics athlete or anything. You could never handpick the people who are standing at graduation. It's going to be a total mix of both, cognitively, mentally, physically, and everybody's journey is totally different. Some people are better at self-motivation than others. Some people lean on, their boat crew members or classmates to help motivate them. And everybody also has their own specific challenges. Sometimes they're not the strongest swimmer, so they're worried about their swim times. They're not the strongest runner, so they're worried about their run times, because every phase you go through Buds, every evolution gets more and more difficult. Your run times have to get dramatically faster every 2 months. Swim times have to get dramatically faster, so every twice a week you're always doing a 4-mile timed run and a timed 2-mile ocean swim. Not the easiest thing in the world to do, but you have to make these certain times. So it's not just the physical strain and the academic part of it, because you're working and getting your butt kicked, especially in the early days, until 1 o'clock in the morning. You got to get up at 4 for your 4-mile timed run, but you have homework to do and studying for your exam tomorrow. So you really get no sleep. But then it's also the stress and anxiety of not just the academic side, but all that difficult evolutions you have to pass, because on most of the evolutions early on, whether it's the drown proofing or some of these drills that weed a lot of people out because they're not comfortable in the water. It's the stress of not passing those things. So it's not just the physical strain, but the mental stress that, if you fail it once, you're done. I mean, that's it. On most of these evolutions, you get one chance. So you can imagine how stressful every single day you get out of bed. You're like, I remember the anxiety of just like every morning I would get up, and this benefited me later in life because I could now manage stress like you couldn't believe. If nobody's trying to blow me up or shoot me in the face, I'm good to go. Any problem is a problem that's solvable. But I would get up every morning at 4 o'clock, just literally wrought with anxiety, knowing that, 1, I'm going to get my butt kicked all day long, but 2, what if I fail one of these evolutions? It wasn't so much of a self-doubt, but knowing that the numbers speak for themselves, the statistics speak for themselves, and knowing that there was a possible element of failure. So the answer to your question is that it's different for every person. Everybody has a different journey and their own different challenges. For me, it wasn't swimming or running or specific evolutions. I didn't have a lot of problems with those. It was the entirety of the whole thing, and the grind and the stress, physically and mentally, that was just. It's just very hard to overcome that level of stress, which is also why oftentimes the guys out of high school, or the younger folks, don't make it, because they haven't had really any life experience. They haven't, they're coming from mom and dad's house. So oftentimes they don't have the emotional maturity or mental fortitude yet. Not that being a fraternity guy in college really gets you ready for SEAL training either. But it's oftentimes too why they just don't have the mental fortitude to handle that anxiety. So thanks. Well, thanks guys, really appreciate it. Thanks for showing up. Thank you, Wendy. Thanks, Steve. Appreciate it, guys.